Hey everybody, Backpack Hack here coming at you with another trail tip. For those of you who are going to eventually pitch a tent, a tarp, a sunshade, a shelter, something that you're going to want to stake down to the ground and tie out. The reason you generally want to do this is to keep the wind from blowing the whole thing into the next county. But eventually you're going to come across this problem, and that is soil that is so loose that no matter how good your stake is, the ground simply will not hold it. So I'm going to show you a couple tricks that I use, no matter where I'm at or what I'm doing, that I can augment the stakes that I have for my tent. A lot of people will say, just get a larger stake. That'll give you more holding power. That's fine if you're camping out of your car, but carrying a bunch of these huge stakes in a backpack in the backcountry isn't very practical. So here's a more sensible solution. Carry several smaller extra stakes. Instead of just having one in the ground, you can actually spread the load between two stakes. And this way you'll have twice the holding power. But sometimes even this is not enough. So it's time to pull out the big guns. What you'll need to find is a stick or a branch that is about an inch, inch and a quarter, maybe an inch and a half thick. And preferably one that's long enough, maybe 1.5 feet or 2 foot. This will give you plenty of material to work with. Now it doesn't matter whether you cut this up with a hatchet, an axe, or a saw, you're going to make your own tent stakes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this off right here, and I'm going to put a point in it. Doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to be functional. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple of notches in this. One about halfway up. I'm going to put a notch. And then on the opposite side, I'm going to put another notch. So I have a notch on opposite sides. Then it's time to employ this method. Now to drive your homemade stake, what you want to do is have the lower notch away from your tent, your tarp, your shelter, whatever. You want the upper notch to be towards it. And you can either drive it straight or at an angle, whichever you prefer. Now, with the help of a couple bowlines and a taut line tied around my regular tent stake, I'm going to go ahead and finish this off. The reason we put a notch on one side and then a notch on the other is so we can take our cord that comes from our shelter and take the first bowline in our run and hook it onto there. And that way it won't slide off. We'll take our second bowline and set it into this notch, and then we'll take the end of our cord, run it out, drive our last stake, and now we can tighten this up with the taut line hitch, and you can see that it's pulling our homemade stake out. Go ahead and reset this into our notch down here, and we have a very, very strong support system. Now, if you have extra pegs, which you should have, you can go ahead and double those up and spread this load among two pegs, and the bulk of the load will be held here. But you can see that once this starts to tighten up, this is not going to go any further. So there's your homemade stake to really make sure that your tent or your shelter or your tarp or your sunshade is secure against strong winds. Now, depending on the soil conditions, you may have to put a second and even a third field-made stake into your pegging system. However, when you get done, you are going to end up with a stake system that is not going to let go. And I don't know about you, but I would much rather go to sleep knowing my tent is going to withstand the wind that might come up during the night than to put the tent up in the middle of the night. It's going to take a little time to do this, but you're far better ahead to build these stakes and make sure your tent is going to be secure for the night than get up in the middle of the night in the dark in a windstorm to try to re-stake your tent out. This is Backpack Cat coming at you with this trail tip. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share my videos. Be safe out there, and I'll see you out on the trail. Let's try that again. I think I'm going to break that paracord.